Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world, and welcome to today's LLM Insight session. We're bang on time, we're just a minute early actually, so we'll just let a few people join just before we head over to the main presentation. But just before we do join you, remind you that this is a live session. It is on Zoom, it's on Facebook and LinkedIn Live today, and it will also be YouTube on demand as well. So if you've missed anything, please don't worry, everything will be on demand. If you have any questions throughout the session, any concerns, anything that you're not sure about, misunderstood, or perhaps misheard, please put it in the chat or the Q&A facility if you're watching on Zoom today. If you are watching on social media today, please put it on the message facility on the actual tab rather than a message to us personally, otherwise we will not see it. And if you are watching on demand, webinars at postgradsolutions.com. I'd like to hand you through to Bridget Sandusky now. She'll be taking you through to the next 20 to 30 minutes. I'll be back for the Q&A at the end. I'll hand it over to you now, Bridget, who can introduce Diane and go from there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Gareth. I am Bridget Sandusky. I am the Assistant Dean of Graduate Law Programs at Suffolk Law School. And today I am joined with Professor Diana Lir, who is the Academic Director of our LLM in Legal Technology and Innovation. And we are really so excited to be able to share with you information about this brand new program, really the first of its kind in the United States. At any time you have questions, please put them into the chat and we are going to have time at the end, but we'll also be answering them live as we're going through the presentation as well. Before we get into the details of the program, first I want to share with you where we're located. And as they say, location, location, location is really the most important part when you're seeking out a graduate law opportunity. And we're located in Boston, Massachusetts. So in the United States, sometimes Suffolk Law School gets confused with Suffolk in England, but we are in the United States, right on the East Coast, on the Atlantic Ocean. We are the largest city in New England. By U.S. standards, we are a historical city. We are the start of the American Revolution. We'll actually be celebrating the 250th anniversary of that. We have the oldest public park right outside our door, the Boston Common. So there's wonderful, great green space. You walk outside of the city, and that was established in 1630. We are a city of colleges and universities. Over 50 universities and colleges are located in the greater Boston area. And what does that mean to you? It means that you're going to be having a wonderful time in the year that you are here. It is a city of young people, individuals that will come here and seeking higher education and then remain and pursue their professional careers here. And there is everything that you would want to find in a large sort of metropolitan area. And so we have a vibrant live music scene, restaurants and pubs and shopping, wonderful museums for students. And if you like sports, Boston has a sports team for every single season. Professional sports teams here in the bottom photo, you'll see from our New England Patriots, a professional American football team, to our Boston Red Sox for baseball, our Boston Bruins for hockey, and then, of course, Boston Celtics that won the championship last year for basketball. So really everybody, even if you're not a sports fan, you become one when you're in Boston just because the whole city comes together, and it's just a lot of fun. And we're also a city of innovation and technology. So we are a recognized global hub for the life sciences industry. And we have lots of other because of all the action that's happening, we're located actually right in the heart of everything. So the judicial, financial, commercial districts, that red dot that you see on that Google map is where we are located. And you don't have to live right in the heart of everything because our public transportation system is reliable and accessible and safe. I take public transportation every single day. I take a public bus to work. Many of our faculty members and students and staff are going to either take, the subway, which is our underground called the T. They'll also, there's trolleys, there's buses. We're also a green city. So for individuals that like to ride their bikes and get out in nature, we have dedicated bicycle paths for students to be doing that as well. So you do not need to have a car. And in fact, I don't recommend it for your year that you might be spending with us here, right in the city. And that location will be key when we talk a little bit more about having access to experiential opportunities and internships. Being in the heart of a large metropolitan area is going to be incredibly helpful when you're looking for those types of internships. So here's a really nice quote from Aubrey, who graduated and with her JD degree from Suffolk. She had the concentration in legal innovation and technology. She was actually voted one of the students of the year by National Jurist for the work that she had been doing. So during her time at Suffolk, she was creating smart forms, and really bringing sort of access to justice. So individuals that aren't always able to afford lawyers, not really quite sure how to navigate the judicial system. And that is something that she's continued on doing. As you can see, she's the senior court management consultant at the National Center for State Courts. So doing some really important work and really crediting Suffolk Law School with that knowledge that she learned during her program, her time at Suffolk. So here a little bit more information about Suffolk. Law schools in the United States tend to be on the smaller side. So it's not uncommon for a law school to only be about 500 students. So we're usually around 11 to 1,200 students at any time. We have faculty members, over 70 full-time faculty members, but because of our location, we also have this amazing deep bench of adjunct law faculty. So these are individuals that by day are working professionals as attorneys, as sitting justices. We have a sitting associate justice on the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, who that court is a 5-minute walk from the law school. And then he comes down and he teaches courses for us at night. So these are individuals that might be major partners at major law firms or boutique law firms that are really coming in and sharing their expertise in advanced and sophisticated coursework with you. So it's really only because of our location that we have access to these types of individuals, many of whom are graduates of Suffolk Law, and they are viewing this as an opportunity to give back to our community and to our students. And it's a wonderful networking opportunity for our students as well. We have a vast array because we are a larger law school. We offer many different elective-based courses that students can choose from, over 200 in an academic year. So within the LLM and Lit curriculum, you'll hear Professor O'Leary will talk about that later on. But also for students that might be looking for something a little bit different from that, there are many other different options to be choosing from. In a given semester, you're only going to be choosing about 4 or 5 courses in a semester. And so if you can imagine that, 100 courses in a semester, and as a faculty advisor to all of our graduate law students, Professor O'Leary will also be advisor to our LLM and Lit students to make sure that you're going to be taking coursework that really suits your particular goals and expertise and what you're hoping to get out of the LLM and Legal Innovation and Technology program. And lastly, I'd like to highlight when oftentimes individuals, you might think of somebody who, wow, that person is a really terrific or outstanding lawyer. There might be certain qualities or characteristics that you might associate with that person. You might say they're a hard negotiator on behalf of their clients, an excellent legal writer, an individual that is a superb oral advocate in the court. And those are all the areas, not just once, not 5 years, but 9 years in a row. Suffolk Law School is the only law school in the United States that has all 4 skills-based specialties ranked in the top 20% of all law schools in the United States. And so that is our legal writing program. Professor Leary teaches within that program, currently number 3 in the United States, always has been in, really in the top 5 for many years. And our trial advocacy program, our clinical training program, and our alternative dispute resolution program. So what that really should tell you is that Suffolk we are known for not only just teaching you the theory, of course we're going to do that, but for a very long period of time, really since our inception in 1906, focusing on providing skills-based, hands-on learning. And that is a critical component of this new LLM degree as well. As I said, we're founded in 1906. So we are, in over 100 years ago. We started as a law school. And so that's quite unusual of itself. But we were started really in providing access and opportunity to individuals at the turn of the century who are not able to go to law school themselves. Because maybe they were not a man, maybe they were not of a certain color, maybe they were not of a certain financial background. And so that is something that's really important and embedded in the mission of Suffolk Law School and in the mission of the university itself of providing access and opportunity to individuals to pursue a legal education. So that is, and we have students that join us from all around the world. So over 100 different countries are regularly represented at the law school, at the university. And then here are some other additional photos in the snowy photo. In truth in advertising, we do get some snow. We have some snow on the ground right now. But, we also have 4 beautiful seasons. So that is the law school building in the snowy photo, and that evening photo. It's a 7-story tall building. The top 2 floors is where you would find our library. And all of your classes will be in this building. So really close and very convenient and accessible for students. And in doing that, this is the public one attached to the Boston Common, so right near us. And then, of course, we have the gorgeous Charles River, which separates Boston from the city of Cambridge. So a very Bostonian type of thing is to learn how to do sailing using community boating if you don't know how to do that. Lots of fun. And, I think in deciding to join the webinar today to learn about this new program, you probably know why you're already here, or maybe you're at least curious, like, what is this program? I've never heard of something like this. You all may have heard about, ChatGPT, generative AI, but why is this happening, now? And why is it important for you as a legal professional, perhaps in the United States, but certainly an international professional as well? And it really, all of this is due to globalization. This is something that has been coming for a number of years. And Suffolk has had a long-standing concentration in legal innovation and technology. And as you can see, you can follow that QR code to one of the articles in which we've been voted #1 in the United States for our work in legal technology, not once, but on multiple occasions. And so that is something that we have been doing for a long period of time. So for us to transition into an LLM program and offering that is relatively easy for us to be doing. You might say, why haven't you done it sooner? But we are the first United States law school. We're the only law school offering an LLM in legal innovation and technology. And we are the only LLM in the United States that has a STEM designation. So for our international students joining and watching this webinar, that means that you do 1 year to complete your degree. You will be able to stay for optional practical training where you will work and receive compensation as long as it is related to your degree. And then you're eligible for an additional extension of 24 months. So 1 year to complete the program, and then an additional 36 months, 3 years in total, that you're able to remain here in the United States and work within this area. So a really exciting opportunity. All other LLM programs are going to be limited to that just 1 year, 12-month cycle of OPT. But because this is STEM designated, it allows you that opportunity to stay here. So we're really excited to have that and offer that as the first in the United States. And now I'm going to turn it over to Professor O'Leary.
Thank you, Dean Sandusky. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Professor Diana Lir. I'm thrilled to be here and to echo so much of what you just heard and share more. I am at Suffolk Law School today, so if you hear construction, ambulances, bells from the church outside my office, I'm looking at the Boston Common and hearing all that goes on in our vibrant downtown. Sometimes annoying, sometimes fun, but always a lot going on. So I'll apologize in advance for any background noise. I want to pick up where Dean Sandusky left off on the why now, but briefly a little bit about myself. So I've been at Suffolk for about 13 years. I'm a tenured professor here. I'm a professor of legal writing, so I focus on skills and all those kind of practical needs that lawyers have in the market. But over the past 5 or 6 years, I've tilted that into the writing and the skills that lawyers did 20 years ago are not what they need today. And so our dean and our programs have really focused on a forward-thinking approach to skill building. And that involves, of course, we all know, technology. And so at some law schools, you'll have pockets of this, a class here and there, maybe one professor who works on this on the side. And I've been thrilled to lead at Suffolk a group of us, 5 or 6, that are really, it's our full-time job to focus on legal practice meets technology and innovation and all that goes into that new web. So it's unique, it's exciting. When I go to conferences around the country, folks look to us as the leader because again, the resources and the class offerings and the commitment is just not there at a lot of law schools. And so I feel so fortunate to be able to be at a place where it is and where I can have fun exploring this new wave of practice. And I did want to add to Dean Sandusky's list of the sports team. I was a soccer player, and so for our soccer here, we do have the New England Revolution, our MLS team, who hasn't been great in the past few years, but they're getting better, who play about 30 miles or so outside of Boston, easily accessible by the commuter rail train. Which is a big concert venue too, where the Patriots play. But I would be remiss if I didn't add our soccer team to the mix as well. So Dean Sandusky asked why now, right? Kind of that big picture. And I want to narrow that specifically to law. AI on the slide, right? We've heard a lot about generative AI, and that has sparked a boom of interest in so many industries and law. But I encourage all of us to back up context-wise. Lawyers have always thought about and had to keep up with technology. So back in the day, lawyers were concerned that their telephone landlines would ruin privilege, right? Decades and decades ago. They were concerned about email, that is not safe, that's not appropriate. Would a client really accept advice over email? Cloud computing was a boom and scary for a lot of folks. How could I ever store work product and client privilege materials in this mystery thing called the cloud? Right, so it's a new landscape, but context-wise, lawyers have always had to keep up and upskill themselves in the midst of technology. I attended a conference a few weeks ago where one of the keynote speakers said, talking about the legal industry, that he has seen more change in the past 5 years than he has in 50. And that struck me as so true when we think about the impact of the pandemic and the explosion in cloud computing and remote work and all the expectations that changed in the industry. Combine that with artificial intelligence and just new business interest in the business of law, not just lawyers, but all sorts of professionals that are getting a piece of the pie now. That ecosystem that Dean Sandusky talked about has just had a massive change over the past 5 years. That's scary, that's exciting, that is so different in different pockets of the profession. But again, that's my job, to keep up with all of that and figure out what that means for students and what that means for the skills employers are looking for. So the key word there is change. You'll see on the slide in terms of clients driving that change, right? Where is this change going to come from? Who's demanding these skills? Ultimately, those are clients saying, I want my lawyer to do X. I need them to understand why. I want them to experiment with ABC tool, right? And we're seeing more of that client demand. And I think that's what's going to really funnel change. So to add to the why now in the big picture, in the profession itself, we've just seen explosive change and a whole new demand for what it means to be a modern lawyer compared to years ago. And then with that, Bridget, if we can move to the next slide, please. And like I said, what does that mean for us? In the past, it was always enough, even when I was in law school at Suffolk 25 or so years ago, it was always enough to just have legal skill. You had black letter law knowledge, you knew property, you knew about contracts, you knew some criminal law. And what we've seen over the past 20 or so years, and especially now, is that's just not enough anymore. Clients assume that their lawyer will know that basic stuff. And who are we kidding? Nowadays, it's easy to find black letter law, regulations, statutes, cases, right? We have that at our fingertips. So that's not really the value add of a lawyer anymore, in my point of view. The value add is what else are you offering? I love the analogy of a T-shaped lawyer. I don't know how many participants have had that, but when you think of the letter T, the basis is that kind of black letter law, basic lawyering. But the T is this horizontal scope of all sorts of other competencies: cultural competency, business acumen, project management, technology. And the idea that a good modern lawyer is dipping their toes, can't be an expert in all of those things, but is dipping their toes enough to recognize, hey, we could do this a little bit better. Or, hey, we need to consult an expert on this. So I love that analogy of a T-shaped lawyer, and we focus on that at Suffolk because it's frankly not enough anymore to have that minimum set of knowledge and skills. Employers, clients are just looking for more. This is a list I could probably triple off the top of my head. These positions did not exist years ago. Even 5 years ago, many of these positions in the legal industry did not exist. Or if they did, they were in pockets of very expensive big law firms and corporations. Now, the legal ecosystem is exploding to catch up with all this change. And what that means is we need more than just lawyers, right? Lawyers can't do it all when there's so much demand and so many things to navigate, so many new regulations coming down the pipes, so many new concerns about privacy and cybersecurity and your data with AI. Lawyers need help. And so law firms, court systems, private companies, all sorts of organizations are looking to new legal professionals, right? And a JD is advantage, a JD might be preferred or required, but the idea of a translator, so not English to Spanish or French to German, but translating technical things to lawyers, right? And to clients and to folks that aren't techies. And I love that idea of these new professional roles are really that middleman, that middlewoman, right? And being able to translate these complex ideas, boil them down, and help out those that need help. Legal engineer, legal solutions architect. We have several Suffolk alum that are in roles like this, and it's great for me to learn from them. What are you doing? What are these new roles all about? But again, it fits into that idea that the legal ecosystem is changing and broadening in scope, right? It's not just lawyers anymore, it's lawyers plus, lawyers with this extra skill set. So that's just kind of a window into what I'm seeing with my finger on this, and I get paid to pay attention to this, and it's just really interesting to think about preparing our students at Suffolk to take on these new type of roles. Dean Sandusky, let's go to the next slide, please. So that brings us to why, and Dean Sandusky mentioned this, but just to back up, so 10 or 12 years ago, Suffolk Law School was the first law school in the country to have any program about innovation and technology. Our dean, Andrew Perlman, started the nation's first Lit Institute and said within our JD program, we need to focus on that, and created a concentration akin to an academic major or a specialized track that said if you want to come to law school, you could bundle. You could focus on these type of classes. Now, like I said, at the time, that was unheard of. Most schools had none of these classes. Some had one or two. But our dean had the vision to say, you know, the future of law is changing and shifting, and we need to prepare our students to keep up. So it's crazy to think that that was 10 or 12 years ago. I think actually 11 years ago at this point. And we've come so far since then. So the Lit concentration for our JD students still exists. I direct that. We've also grown an R&D, research and development, Lit lab, which has been really exciting, a hands-on, really a research and design lab with 2 colleagues who are coders by background and lawyers. And so they are making things. They are creating forms with students. They are building interfaces with e-filing with our court system. And that hands-on aspect for our Lit Lab, we've received tremendous community support and grants to build real tools that go into state courts, that go into legal aid offices that are helping people that need legal services the most. So that's our Lit Lab. We've also had a vibrant student association. We have an Innovation and Technology Student Association where students plan speakers and activities all centered around these forward-thinking aspects of their skills. We've also organized collaborations with companies. So for instance, I organized a design challenge with a big insurance company in Boston. And we have a day hackathon where students face a legal problem and get trained on design thinking and interact with industry professionals and pitch their ideas and their solutions at the end of the day. Last spring, we organized a prompting generative AI challenge with Wolters Kluwer, a huge global company that asked our students to play around with prompting and help them think about changing their tools. And so one thing is learning in the classroom, but our LIT program has really focused on that's not enough. And we need to kind of think outside the classroom and get our students interacting with folks in the industry and not just in the classroom. So all of that leads us to the LIT LLM because we have heard from so many folks over the past decade of, I didn't get those skills. I want some of that, right? These are students that maybe went to law school at a different time or different law schools or have been in different program or just different pockets of the industry and are recognizing, I want to get on that train. I want that skill set. I want to know, I want to be able to talk the talk of all these changes that I'm hearing about. So with that backdrop, the LIT LLM was the best natural next step. And so I am thrilled to be involved with it, thrilled to design it and direct it. And like Dean Sandusky said, we have so many of those bones in place, it made sense to offer them to more students. And so it's not the case where our new coursework has to be built from the ground up or we're flying by the seat of our pants, if you will, experimenting with some new faculty. We are here, we are teaching this, we are building it, we are already doing it, and we're just so excited to share it with more students. I think, Dean Sandusky, we can move on. So who's coming, right? Who are we hoping to come? Like I said, the industry is broad, and so we're thinking that this set of coursework is designed for lawyers who are already practicing, but want that plus factor, right? Or looking to upskill to a more modern set of parameters that they can help their clients with. But like I said before, similar to that list, legal professionals of all sorts roles are being created every day. So professionals that are in the legal industry that perhaps want to gain additional skills to be promoted, to change roles, to lead certain initiatives. One of our students is interning right now and is interning under a chief AI officer, which is, again, a thing that never existed back in the day, right? That person is not necessarily a lawyer, but just the idea of these new roles looking at technology meets the legal profession. And then foreign trained lawyers interested in this type of training, like Dean Sandusky said, the STEM designation, and trying to immerse themselves in this market, again, in the classroom, but out of the classroom with the various companies and courts and vendors and e-discovery software companies. We have so much of that community here in Boston. Really, my question back to this slide is who is this degree not designed for in this modern ecosystem? So nuts and bolts, right? I've talked in big picture. What is the LIT LLM? It's laid out here, and there's two themes here. One is knowledge, but practice. So we think students need the basic idea of why change. How is it coming? How does it happen? What is the problem with the current methods of lawyering and delivery of legal services? How can they be better, right? But talk is cheap, so to speak. And so we've really infused the curriculum with building, with tools, with practice, with development of online guided interviews, with smart forms, with custom GPT prompting frameworks to draft legal memos. So you name it, there's a piece of theory and there's a piece of actually hands-on building, getting your feet wet, logging in, doing things and having that concrete skill set. So that's the first point. The second point of designing the curriculum here was required and elective. We felt that there were certain core classes we wanted all our lit LLM students to take, but we also wanted the flexibility, and we recognized that students have different interests and different career paths and plans. And so we built the program to hopefully touch both the required kind of core group, those classes of 21st century legal profession, process improvement, legal project management, and then one course, either generative AI and delivery of legal services or tech for small firms. But after that, my role is to guide and work with students to pick what interests you, and really then shape the rest of those elective credits in a way that best serves your path and your professional goals. Dean Sandusky, I think that's it for me for now, unless on that point, do we want to perhaps touch on the in-person or online or pacing or timing of the degree a little bit more?
I think I'll get to that on a future slide, and we'll talk about really the flexibility that the students will have. Some of that will depend on if you're coming to the United States on an F1 visa versus if you're going to be joining us and doing online coursework, which will be an opportunity. So it really is whatever suits your, interest and wanting to either come here to the United States, or if you maybe need to be remaining where you are, maybe you're on the West Coast in California and you want to take courses, you're going to be able to do that. Or if you're somewhere else in the world, you either can come here to Boston, which we would love to have you, but we realize that that's not always something that you're able to do. But I will touch on that. That is certainly something that we want to highlight.
Terrific.
Now that you've learned really kind of like the nuts and bolts of the degree, why did we start it? Who do we think it's for? I'd like to share with you a little bit more about where would it be, like our building, the facilities that we have for students to be coming. Here is a picture from one of 18 smart classrooms that we have. This is going to be showcasing a large classroom setting, but many of the courses you're going to be taking within the Lit LLM program, because you are learning skills-based and hands-on learning, you can't learn that in a classroom of 100 students. So those courses are going to be capped, at somewhere between, sometimes it's 12 students, maybe it's 18, maybe it's 25 students. It's going to depend on the particular course and the types of skills building that's occurring within that particular course. But there's a lot of for the most part, within the LLM and Lit, you're never going to be in a class that's going to have 100 students in it. I'd say somewhere between 25 to 30 would be the max, and I would guess that many of them actually would be a lower number of students than that. And then here's a very small portion of our library, our great reading room, but our library takes up the top 2 floors of the law school building. All the best views of the city are seen from there. Open 7 days a week. We are also really have some wonderful legal reference librarians that are there to assist students. If you're writing a paper, and you're just not quite finding the resources that you need, they're there to help and assist you as well. Here is a great quote from Vedika, who is now director at Oracle Labs. She completed, again, that legal innovation and technology concentration. And she is one of those roles that Professor Leary highlighted. She started out graduating from law school and was a legal solutions architect. So that was her job, but that was back in 2015. So she was really, Vedika was at the forefront of really taking advantage and leveraging the skills that she learned at Suffolk when not many places were even thinking or contemplating, like, do I need this? Do we want this? So she really is a leader. And in fact, we have found her to be such a wonderful leader. She was recently named in 2023, so 2 years ago, the graduate of the last decade for her work in this particular area. And then here are interiors, and you'll say, oh, but that looks like it's a courtroom. Well, sometimes it runs as a courtroom, as a motion docket, but we have 3 courtrooms in the law school building, and they're training facilities for our students who might want to be trial litigators, for example. So students, you'll see there's TV monitors, there's video cameras. Students, this is another way that Suffolk, and that is why we are regularly voted for our trial advocacy program, because students are recorded, it's played back, they're learning by watching themselves, receiving critique from their faculty member, from their other peers. What did you do great with this week, or what do we need to continue to improve upon? What would have been a more effective closing argument? What would have been a better objection that you did than what you did when we were doing this sort of role-playing court system? And when you come into the law school, you are coming in, that top photo is our great hall. So it's a 4-story atrium. On those 2nd and 3rd floors is where you will find our offices. So Professor Leary and my office. I'm located there right on the corner, actually, in that 2nd floor. And we're really readily available and accessible to our students. And here, Julia Rogers, she's really just an amazing individual. Graduate, she, again, obviously completed the Legal Innovation and Technology Certificate, and she has developed this software. She's the CEO of Hello Prenup. And this is really, I guess she would say it takes the awkwardness out of discussions and implementing a prenuptial agreement. And she went on a television show we have here in the United States. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's Shark Tank. And these are venture capitalists, and you pitch your product. And she did that, and she successfully received funding on that show. And they also did a recent follow-up, which Julia was highlighted for her work and continued success within this area. And they also spoke with Dean Andrew Perlman because of the forward thinking that the law school had and the positive impact and skills that Julia learned within her JD program at Suffolk. She has, she's a contributor at Forbes. She's been on CNN Business, Reuters. She's a Fast Case 50 member, as is Professor O'Leary. So, just really law school graduates. All 3 of these individuals that we've highlighted today really are very well connected and want to give back. They're regular speakers, panelists, presenters, and they come to and talk at student groups. So Julia came back this past fall. We also, besides the legal innovation and tech, we also have a data security privacy student group. And so they came together and she was the moderator for a wonderful group of individuals, most of them graduates of the law school that were doing data security and privacy work. And so they really are always looking for ways to give back. Maybe that's in the form of internships, maybe that's in the form of introductions. So networking or simply coming back to the law school, teaching a course. So there are so many ways and opportunities for students to get involved. This is just a very small sampling. There's over 40 active student law groups on campus. So pretty much you can find almost anything that you want to get involved in. And if you don't, you also have the opportunity to create your own student group as well. That's where these new student groups, the data security and privacy, didn't exist 10 years. Students started that. Same thing with the legal innovation student law group. They started that within the past 10 years. So lots of opportunity for growth if you have a particular interest that you want to be able to follow as well. And our LLM students really come from around the world. So although this is a new LLM degree, so we're currently accepting applications to start at the end of August of 2025. We have had an LLM program at Suffolk since 2002. So it is not new for us to be hosting LLM students from around the world. And they've come from over 70 different countries during that time period. This is always a really really happy and wonderful days showcasing graduation. And just in a very small snapshot, you can see Flaviano from Brazil, you have Guillermo from Panama, Ankit from India, we have Roberta from Italy, and then we have Arut from Vietnam. So this tiny photograph, and you have all these nations, and obviously such a wonderful and happy day for graduation day. And, although we are the only law school, if you're looking for legal innovation and technology, we're the only law school that's really offering this as a degree, and certainly the only one with a STEM-focused LLM, STEM-approved LLM degree. But, as our location, you really cannot match our location, and all that's going to allow you to have access to. The LLM and Lit does require an internship during that time period. So that is curricular practical training. So you don't have to wait until you graduate to do OPT to start to get hands-on experience as soon as the second semester of your LLM program. Clearly, this is focused on you being here in residence in Boston during that time period. But we're offering the degree can be completed online completely. So you can, no matter where you are in the world, I will say that you will have to make sure you're adaptable. The courses might not always be at the time, a normal time frame for where you are. But if this is something important to you, and it could be a potential cost savings, because obviously you're not coming to Boston and paying to be living here. Maybe you don't want to uproot your family, for example. Maybe you still need to be working at the law firm or the legal practice of where you are, but you are really want to gain this additional new and legal knowledge from a leading expert institution in the United States with this. So you could do it completely online. You could have it hybrid opportunities. So if you are here in the United States, maybe you live in New England, so you want to do some classes in person, but you also want to do some classes online when it suits you. You would be able to do that. And then we're obviously going to have an in-person opportunity. So for those that want to take advantage of completing an LLM program in one academic year and then being able to stay here for a period of 3 years afterwards, and gain some, really insightful and wonderful experience in this particular area to bring back to your home countries or wherever else in the world that you might want to go to next. But really, you would be a leader in this area. We will have students, as I said, we are accepting applications for this coming fall of 2025. So that begins at the end of August. But we also will accept applications starting in January, a January start. That's our spring. Doesn't sound very spring-like, but that is our spring start. And every single application that we will receive will be automatically considered for merit-based scholarship opportunities. So you do not have to submit any special, other financial documents at that time for that, a different essay. You will be automatically considered and, well-qualified individuals up to a potential of a 50% of total tuition costs. That would be our highest scholarship award that we would be offering. And if you have joined and you've watched this and you said, oh, this is interesting, but I'd also like to be, thinking about different programs that Suffolk might offer. We do offer a general LLM program. So that one is completely customizable. And so I am the academic director for those LLM programs. And we have an LLM in global law and technology. And then we have another STEM approved degree, which is a really interesting model because it is interdisciplinary, and we have faculty members teaching from our law school, from our business school, and from our College of Arts and Sciences. And that is our Masters of Science in Law Life Sciences. So a very specialized niche program. But as I said, Boston and Massachusetts, it's a recognized global leader in the life sciences, biotech, pharmaceutical industries, and this is going to be focusing on that particular area. We're both a full-time and part-time program. If you're coming on an F1 student visa, you do have to be a full-time student. But if you are here already living here in the United States, you can come as a part-time student as well and complete coursework by attending classes at night in the evening. We offer that as our JD program. Classes begin at 9 o'clock in the morning until 10 p.m. at night. So there's a great deal of flexibility built in to the course offerings that we have at the law school. And we are very big proponents of networking. We tell students, and in fact, we believe so strongly in that every single student is given free membership to the Boston Bar Association, which is a quick 5-minute walk from the law school, and the Massachusetts Bar Association. And so they have all different section groups. So they have one in data security and privacy. They're always, I think, starting in the fall in the past couple of years, I know there's another one coming up that they have webinars in-person types of sessions focusing on how the legal practice is changing. So current lawyers that are working here in Boston are really interested in this area. And maybe they're already doing work. So those are the panelists. Those are the individuals that say, we've been doing this in our office, and this is why you should be doing it. And this is wonderful opportunities for you as a student to be able to go and meet and network and to learn from them. And in doing that. So that is very nearby. And lastly, quickly to focus on just application requirements are going to be very similar to any law school that you would be applying to in the United States. An online application. We use LSAC's LLM service. If you contact me, we do often waive the application, the $60 application fee. And then you're going to write a personal statement. Somebody asked in the chat if they could use AI, and I said, no, you cannot. We want to hear from you and why are you interested in this degree and your own voice. So we do, ask you that you are not going to be utilizing AI to be writing and crafting your goal statement or your personal statement. And believe me, we often can tell if you are utilizing AI to do that. So that's definitely a no-no. You do not want to be doing that. Resume, 2 letters of recommendation that should be legally related. Obviously, your transcripts are going to be a very important part. An average GPA of a 3.0. So that means there's individuals that are going to have higher GPAs, and there's going to be individuals that have lower GPAs. And we do a translation. LSAC does a translation. You might say, I don't even know what a GPA is. They will take your legal system of grading and they will translate it back into what a US GPA would be. LSAC does that through their credential assembly service. And lastly, critical to your success in the program is that if English is not your native language, that you need to demonstrate that you have English proficiency. And so that is really important. We accept TOEFL, we accept IELTS, and we do also accept Duolingo. So and you'll see the deadline. You have plenty of time to be submitting an application for an August of 2025 date. So a couple more months to be doing that. And obviously you'd be way ahead of the game if you were already considering for January of 2026. Seems odd saying 2026 when I've just gotten used to saying 2025. And then if you have other questions, we're going to stop and answer questions that you might have, but you can feel free to contact me via email or Professor O'Leary. You can also schedule directly to my calendar by using that You Book Me link too. So it has been a pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Diane, as well. It's very informative. There were some fascinating facets to that presentation, and I'm going to kind of unravel a couple of the points that have been made. Diane, I want to begin with one of the craziest things I've ever heard for a long time is somebody being chief officer for AI. And who would have thought 5, 10 years ago that would ever happen? And that's now a role. But I want to elaborate further on the fact that earlier it was mentioned, there is somebody in a chief. in a high position for AI, but at the same time, during the studies, you're encouraged not to use it as much or use it as a guide rather than using it as your education. How do you get that balance right? Because there is that temptation, of course, to put everything in, I won't name them, but one of these third-party websites and let it do the work for you. And what kind of damage can that have, not just on your resume, but on your studies and your career, if you do think about doing that?
Yeah, great question. It reminds me of an analogy I heard. It's called the atrophy problem. So I used to be a skier and I hurt my knee and I didn't ski for 6 months, barely moved my knee. When I went to move my knee again, it didn't work, right? The atrophy problem. It had sat still for so long, it forgot how to do the thing. And so I tell my students, if you don't do your thing and you're not critically analyzing and thinking and organizing and thinking deeply about your writing and your positioning and your goals, the reality is your brain is like all our other parts and atrophy will set in. And I feel it sometimes in my own workflows. We've all gotten used to our reverse cameras on our car and our GPS, right? There's ways that our brain adjusts when we outsource and rely too heavily on technology. So I think you're right on. It's a real thing. I think finding pockets of use and understanding kind of what I call low risk use versus high risk. For example, brainstorming ideas or editing something you've written, right? Or uploading something you've written and say, what am I forgetting? Challenge me. What are some pushbacks to this? I think those are low risk, intellectually stimulating, helpful uses. Prompting a tool to say, write my essay for X or draft a legal memo for this client, that's a high risk use, right? And without that human in the loop and real verification, it's just the reward is not there, the risk is too great. And I'll also say, we mentioned all sorts of tools. One thing we focus on is tool selection. So 2 years ago, ChatGPT was the only player in town. Yeah. That is not true anymore. So you have kind of these generic, off-the-shelf, cheapo consumer models of AI, and then you have really fine-tuned, reliable, maybe legal research, or the Bridget and Diane law firm have kind of crafted their own model. So one size does not fit all here when we say, can you use AI, right? For what? What's the risk? What are the ethics parameters? What are the confidentiality? What tool are you using? So there's all sorts of dynamic to the can I use AI question. But I go back to that atrophy problem and the risk reward and recognizing that it's not a one size fits all decision. So, I'm learning this right alongside my students, which is a lot of fun and it changes every day with new models and new tools and new risks. So it's certainly exciting to keep up with, but it's a great point and it's something everyone should be thinking critically, both in their own workflow with their resumes, their essays, but also when it comes to client facing work.
And also, as well, to elaborate a little bit further on that, there will be states wherever you go on and further your studies or go on and be employed that are slightly behind the trend. So where you have, Massachusetts and you've got New York, you've got California that are very, very far ahead in terms of technology and even in the law system. The law system moves very slowly, which I understand, but there are some states which move a lot faster than others. You go to some Midwest states and they are still very much, we were speaking to San Diego last week and they said they send some students down to Mexico and educate them because they've only just for the first time actually had proper trials. So it's madness to think that you've got some states on the East Coast which are very far away ahead, which can use AI in any kind of situation. And there'd be some states where you just can't use it because they're not that far advanced yet. So very important to note that. Moving on to the next question, and Bridget, you touched upon this towards the end of your presentation. The enrollment date, you put in there about 2026. You're right, it's crazy to think we're talking about that when we've only kind of just got used to 2025. But can students apply now? What can students do right now to encourage the opportunity to actually be enrolled? And if they do fail in succeeding coming to the law school, what would you recommend they do in the meantime if their English language wasn't up to scratch or their visa requirement didn't quite hit the mark? What would you do to that student to help them out?
Right. Great question. And I think that's something maybe lots of students or who are interested in coming to the United States might be grappling with right now. How might things be changing in the coming months? Students can apply right now for August of 2025. So that application is up. We're accepting applications. They can start on that application today. For students that need to continue to work on their English language skills, um, that's just it's practice. Yeah, there's really no easy way to do that to improve unless you are working on that on a regular basis. So it might be that you are taking an online course, and maybe it's an in-person course. Maybe you're coming to the United States and you're going to spend a year here first improving your English language skills. So there are individuals that are able to do that. There's an additional cost associated with that. But there are lots of, English language providers. Suffolk, we have our own, we work with Suffolk and they do provide additional English language support for students. So that would be an option. And for visas and going to a visa appointment, we do work with our students throughout the process, making sure that they have everything that they need, helping them preparing for interviews, but at the end of the day, it's one person. It could be one person who's making that decision. And we're human. We're also every human has biases. And sometimes the result is wrong. And it's really frustrating for students to have that happen when they said, I have everything. I have a scholarship. I've done all the right things. I have the money that my family members have all put together for me to be able to go and to do and pursue this opportunity, and to have that decision made by one person of saying, no, we don't think that you're going to come back and return. So we're going to deny, or we don't think you have enough funding, can be really frustrating. But I tell those students not to give up, to move forward, to, if this is really important to you, don't give up on that dream. I've worked with students who I met them when they've been in the United States for, a week or two, and they barely are able to say hello and ask how I am. But they know that this is what they want to do, that they want to pursue an LLM degree. And if that is important to you to be able to do that in the United States, don't give up on that. And because this program is available, as an online format, that also would take away, you don't have to worry about the visa aspect. So if that's something that's very concerning to an individual from a particular country, there would be that option to be pursuing this in an online format too. So I think there's, don't give up, dare to dream big, and don't. Sometimes we have, a couple more roadblocks thrown our way that we don't expect. But I can, from firsthand, having worked in this role for almost 20 years, the number of students that have come through my door and really the stories that they've shared with me and the obstacles that they've had to overcome is so impressive and inspiring to me every day in the work that I do. So I think there's always a way, and not to give up.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Bridget. And Diana, I'm just going to ask one final question to yourself as well. We saw earlier a few slides, the cosmopolitan nature of the law school, mainly because of the location, the great location, and as well the welcoming place that Boston is. Let's not forget, you're in an educational place that's really popular. How many international students are at the law school? And how does that add to the culture within the environment?
So on the first point, I'm going to kick that to Dean Sandusky. But what I will add is on the, because I don't have the number as good as she does, but I had a student from Turkey in an LLM program in my modern innovation and tech practice skills class last spring semester. And it was just fascinating for her to share. We were talking about unauthorized practice of law. So the United States is quite strict about who can and cannot practice law. Wildly different around the world. Just, a totally different model. And for her to be able to share the approaches and the techniques that she was exposed to practicing law. I mean, so that's my, kind of front of mind. It was just such a great contribution because as lawyers, we often get in our own silos, right? Our own workflows, our own structures. So to me, selfishly, to enrich the classroom for my students, I think the more the merrier and the more diverse those experiences, because like Dan Sandusky said, it's that global ecosystem now, and what's okay in the EU is not going to be okay here, and vice versa. And the more we can toss that around in the safety of our law school, the better. On the exact numbers, Dean Sandusky, I'll turn that over to you if you have a better sense.
Yeah, it really varies from year to year. As you might expect, our JD program does have some international students in it, but it's not going to be as robust as what an LLM program. But the vast majority of our international students are at Suffolk University as a whole. And so that, Suffolk is 14th, I think it was 14th, the percentage of international students that are enrolled at Suffolk University. And so that has been for a very long period of time. Suffolk has valued the contributions. We have welcomed the varied perspectives that our students bring to our classroom. And unlike at other LLM programs, where LLM students are only with other LLM students, our LLM students are with JD students. So as Professor O'Leary, I know that student that she is talking about, Eileen, and they get as much out of it. Our international students, being the only international student in Professor O'Leary's class, as those JD students. So the impact that you have, you don't need to have, hundreds of international students for them to get to know American students, to bring their perspective into a classroom, because it is so critically important. I actually often will say from my side of it's more important for what our international students bring to our JD students than the other way around. Because we are living in this globalized world. And having cultural competency is so important. And no matter what area of law that you practice, and because, lines have been blurred. People are, law is, no longer domestic law. Of what we used to think as like, oh, okay, I might practice family law and it's only here. But guess what? People marry people from different countries. People get divorced. People have kids. People, buy property in different countries. People will design a product in the United States, produce it in another country, and sell it in a third country. And the beauty of all of those things is that all those transactions require lawyers. And oftentimes lawyers that are going to have cultural competencies, that might have language skills that they're bringing, knowledge of how other legal systems work. And so the more that students, both international students and JD students, sort of focus on that, the more successful that they're going to be and being able to be leaders of the next generation of lawyers.
Well said, perfect, and a lovely note to end on. That's exactly an hour. So thank you very much. Thank you to all those watching on social media. I hope that's been engaging. This will be on demand. So I'm sure you'll be watching a lot more of this over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Bridget, Diane, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, you can see Dean Sandusky and Professor Diana Leary's details on the screen now, or you can reach out to myself, Gareth, at postgradsolutions.com. But for now, Bridget, Diane, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again towards the end of the year. Thank you very much.